look at me, right? And look at the Queen. I was never a fan until it occurred to me how much me and Mum have in common. Bringing up kiddies you can't remember the names of. I know she's not a single parent, but she might as well be. Plus, the pair of us, we stuck to our guns, her literally sometimes, and flagship to dying breed. Admired and despised equally. Not for never lifting a finger, no. For setting examples through extremity. And whether you're a bigwig on her end or a bigwig on mine, you still got all your dickheads in the middle to deal with. Snip, snip, snipping at your benefit.
The underclass can be defined as a group of individuals who, due to lack of income, skills and employment, are at the bottom of the social system, and these individuals face high risk of social exclusion. The term was coined by Gunnar Myrdal, a Swedish scholar who wrote of American social problems. The term was not intended to pathologise the poor, but was an analytic term which described those in the lowest economic stratum of American society. These individuals had no upward mobility despite of post-war economic growth. However, the term soon became applied by right-wing politics in the discussion of cultures of poverty. Ways in which the underclass are viewed is motivated by political ideology. The political left view the underclass as a vulnerable social group at the bottom of the social system, who are excluded from wider society and who are victims to structural inequalities. However, the political right view the underclass as a group of individuals who have a self-perpetuating culture of poverty, and they discuss this group in transgressive terms, broadly characterising lower classes as feckless, fatalistic criminals dependent on welfare.
Everything just started escalating. People just started coming out of everywhere.
MSN. Bebo, Twitter.
Get on Facebook, send a message, get down to Manchester.
Hoods up, masks on, just going absolutely crazy.
I was buzzing, man.
The misreading of Oscar Lewis's work is argued to have influenced right-wing views of an underclass. His work suggested that poverty was a design for living and contained three identifiable factors, including matrifocal families, feelings of marginalisation and lack of community and political participation. Lewis believed that these feelings of marginalisation result in fatalistic behaviour. However, he stated this wasn't prevalent in advanced capitalist societies such as the UK. An example of a right-wing perspective of the underclass is Charles Murray, an American political scientist and sociologist who was invited to the UK in 1989 to investigate the emerging British underclass. Following his investigation, Murray wrote of how an emerging underclass is present in Britain. Murray's conception of the underclass was centred on three propositions: illegitimacy, crime and absence in the labour market. Murray highlights that the notion of the underclass is not a new phenomenon, and in fact it dates back to an early Victorian period. The work of Henry Mayhew in the Morning Chronicle made distinctions of the undeserving and deserving poor. And similarly, Murray argues that the term underclass refers not to a degree of poverty, but to a type of poverty.
First and crucial point is I'm not talking about poverty per se. There are lots of people who are poor who are not members of the underclass. I'm talking about people who prey chronically on society, meaning habitual criminals. I mean people who are chronically dependent on society who are healthy and of working age. People who are living outside the mainstream of society.
Field rejects Murray's culture of poverty thesis and instead emphasises the role of government policies and structural disadvantages in the creation of an underclass. Field believes there is an underclass within Britain, but that is misrepresented, and for him the underclass consists of three groups: the elderly pensioner, the single parent and the long-term unemployed. Field focuses on the role of the government, past and present, in widening the gap between the rich and the poor. His work Losing Out focuses on how Thatcher's politics of wealth and Conservatives' drawbridge mentality significantly impacted the poorest within Britain. Ways in which policies increased inequality include the unfair distribution of wealth in the UK and the reduction of wages in the lowest paid trades, resulting in decreasing living standards, social standing and life chances. Field believes welfare policies since 1979 amounted to a mini-revolution which contributed significantly to an underclass. He states the idea of a culture of dependency is a contradiction in conservative politics, because means-tested benefits trap individuals to become dependent on welfare. Field attributes the abolition of exchange controls and the sharp increase in the value of the pound in the erosion of the working class identity, as this resulted in the closing down of British industry and created mass unemployment within the UK. Following this, structural changes in the labour market, such as increasing casualised work, means that although jobs may be available, often they are poorly paid, they lack security, and individuals are no longer entitled to benefits like pensions. He argues that modern work has become less rewarding and places feelings of inferiority upon the casual worker. Finally, the buying of social housing in the 80s separated the poorest in society and created a stigma of council houses, which he now argues are built like ghetto areas, isolated from the rest of society. So, for Field, the underclass are alienated in terms of income, life chances and political aspirations. With further cuts to welfare and increasing polarisation between the rich and the poor within the UK, the concern of an underclass has resurfaced. The decline in class discourse and the emergence of a new term, chav, has sparked a new underclass debate.
Something was in the air, and we needed a way to describe it without sounding like snobs. We didn't have to wait long. Soon, a new word was on everyone's lips.
Chav. Chavs are basically gangster wannabe. What is it? Chav stands for council houses and vandalism.
It degrades people.
It strips people at girlfriend. She's one of the biggest chavs around, yeah?
A bit, put it a bit
exactly what we tend to do. We do love the streets, wearing tracksuits and just like enjoying themselves. I like my tracksuit ones.
Through Conservative and New Labour politics, the idea of class was dismantled, giving rise to the creation of a dehumanised transgressive subgroup termed the chav. Hayward and Yar argued that the term chav is a reconfiguration of the previous underclass idea through the use of new semantics. They claim there are many homologies between meaning, content, objects and tenor of the two terms. However, it also represents a cultural shift in which individuals are marginalised in a new way. Jones argues the term chav has become a catch-all epithet encompassing negative traits associated with the working classes, and a new way to discriminate the underprivileged. First definition in the Collins Dictionary defines a chav as a working class person who dresses in casual sports clothing, and the term has long established associations with deprivation and marginalisation. The chav is demonised, and this is perpetuated by the media, with characters like Vicky Pollard being the embodiment of the chav, a young tracksuit-wearing single mother who lacks moral standards. Jones argues the creation of the chav has enabled blame to be deflected away from structures that create inequality onto individuals, and instead blames social ills upon a deprived subgroup. Hayward and Yar contend that a cultural shift in society has occurred, whereby identity and social classification are no longer constructed through an individual's role in production, but in the ability to consume. It is chav's excessive participation in market-orientated consumption which is deemed as aesthetically impoverished, and these individuals are viewed as lacking in cultural capital. Not only is the way that chavs behave seen as transgressive, but their consumption choices are deviant and reject normative tastes. Nightingale argues that when individuals are excluded, they tend to over-identify through consumption to create an identity. Moran states that class distinctions have been replaced by subgroups distinguishable by consumption choices, for example the toff and the chav. Cultural criminologists argue that the idea of a chav culture is perpetuated by the marginalisation that youths face. It causes individuals to reject societal norms of which they do not feel a part of, meaning a sense of identity comes from transgressing. Additionally, contemporary cultural studies claim the chav phenomenon is a symbolic solution in reaction to structural problems underprivileged youths face. Transgressive behaviour is explained as a result of marginalisation, causing excessive boredom, to which some individuals may resort to crime as a way of seeking pleasure. It is argued the chav phenomenon is a new identity created to compensate for political change. Subcultures have emerged who no longer gain identity through work and are distinguishable through the ability to consume. Within Britain, the chav has become a socially acceptable way of hating the underprivileged.
Just because I'm a chav, it doesn't mean I'm gonna nab your handbag.